Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to do something a little unconventional today, but honestly, it is incredibly fascinating. We are going to take a 2-minute toddler transcript. Yep, the absolute classic, the wheels on the best, and treat it with strict, unyielding academic rigor. Seriously, by putting this hyper-familiar text under a sociological microscope, we're going to uncover the hidden brilliance and the wild complexity behind its simplicity. You are absolutely going to see your daily commute in a whole new light. To make sense of this, we'll break it down into 4 quick phases. First, anatomy of the bus. Second, sensory and safety signals. Third, cascading passenger dynamics. And finally, the cyclical transit loop. All right, Section 1, anatomy of the bus, where we look at its mechanical foundation. Right off the bat, the text establishes a very strict boundary. Think about the phrase all through the town. It gets repeated incessantly at the end of nearly every single stanza. The crucial takeaway here is that this environment is completely geographically contained. The bus never heads out to the country, it doesn't venture to another city. This relentless repetition proves we are looking at a closed ecosystem. Everything that happens is strictly bound by those city limits. Within this closed system, we get introduced to the primary mechanical components, and it brilliantly sets up a clash between 2 totally different types of motion. On one hand, you have the wheels going round and round. That is continuous rotation, a relentless forward momentum just driving the narrative. But then, on the other hand, you have the doors going open and shut. That's a binary interruption. It's a strict either-or state that regulates how the outside world flows into the vehicle. So we've got continuous drive versus binary control. And you've got to notice the sheer mathematical precision of this universe. Seriously, look closely at the actions. Nearly every mechanical and human movement strictly adheres to a rule of 3. The wheels go around 3 times. The doors open and shut in groups of 3. It establishes this fundamental, unbreakable rhythmic law that governs pretty much every single action we're about to look at. Moving on to Section 2, sensory and safety signals, focusing on active communication. This text doesn't just randomly list out bus parts. It actually outlines a highly logical, escalating procedure for navigating urban traffic. Step 1 is the wipers, which is pure environmental adaptation. Then steps 2 and 3, the signals blinking and the horn beeping, those represent active communication and safety protocols directed right at other vehicles. And finally, step 4, the motor going vroom, raw mechanical propulsion. It's a literally perfect sequence checklist for transit operation. Let's isolate that very first step for a second. The wipers go swish, swish, swish. By focusing on the specific mechanical deployment, the text heavily implies changing external elements that the bus has to mechanically overcome just to keep going. It doesn't explicitly say it's raining, right? But deploying this autonomous adaptation mechanism completely reveals that the outside world is throwing curveballs at the vehicle's journey. The vehicle also operates on a hyper-regimented auditory framework. The consistency is wild. Signals blink 3 times, the horn beeps 3 times, the motor vrooms 3 times. It really hammers home the predictable, highly standardized nature of public transit. There's zero chaos in the machine's design. It is just this perfectly regulated symphony of predictable outputs. Let's jump to Section 3, cascading passenger dynamics, where we look at the reactive ecosystem inside. So, who is actually in this enclosed societal microcosm? Well, we start with the general populace, just the people. But then the text immediately fractures that population into highly specific familial units: babies, mommies, and daddies. That is the exact, rigid social hierarchy contained within the metal walls of this bus. And as soon as we meet the people, we get this fascinating physical contrast. Notice how the rigid side-to-side horizontal binary of the doors going open and shut completely clashes with the vertical bouncing of the people going up and down. The machine operates on this very strict lateral plane, but the human experience inside? It's characterized by pure vertical turbulence. The machine is literally containing the chaos of the human element. Now, that human turbulence inevitably creates friction, which sets up a brilliant mini-narrative of cause and effect. First, the stimulus, infant distress, explicitly coded as babies going wah, 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 again, hitting that standard grouping of 3. And this instantly triggers a reaction, an auditory pacification protocol from the mothers who go shh, shh, shh. It is a flawlessly balanced social equation. Instant distress meets immediate mitigation.
But then, something absolutely extraordinary happens. Amidst this whole sea of repetitive onomatopoeic sounds, the wahs, the beeps, the vrooms, the shishes, the daddies drop this line, "I love you." This is huge, guys. It is the absolute only instance of complex language in the entire source material. In an ecosystem totally defined by mechanical noises and primal human sounds, this sudden burst of higher-level emotional articulation completely shatters the auditory pattern we've been trapped in. Finally, Section 4, the cyclical transit loop, our structural arc.
When we map out the timeline here, a pretty stark reality emerges. We start with the wheels going round and round. We journey through this complex middle section full of mechanical signaling, vertical human bouncing, and deep emotional declarations. And how does it end? Exactly as it began. The wheels going round and round. The narrative structure literally traps both the machine and its passengers in an endless cyclical loop. There is no destination mentioned at all, just the perpetual motion of the journey itself. Yet, despite being trapped in this endless rotation, and despite those fleeting moments of infant distress we talked about, we really have to look at the ambient auditory cues going on in the background. We hear upbeat music, a baby laughing, kids laughing, more baby gurgling at the end. These atmospheric cues ensure that the overall tone of this enclosed ecosystem stays incredibly joyful and optimistic. It totally defies the potentially maddening reality of their endless loop. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a somewhat existential thought. The text gives us this meticulously detailed account of the journey, the machinery, and the social dynamics, but it entirely leaves out an arrival. If the wheels simply go round and round all through the town over and over again, do they ever truly reach their destination? It's a wild question that really invites you to rethink the simplest, most repetitive routines in our own lives. Next time you hear this tune, you won't just hear a kid's song. You're going to see a complex, perfectly balanced mechanical and sociological ecosystem.